SABC Foreign Desk will bring you comprehensive coverage of UNGA 73. SABC News, impartial and independent.
In our top story this afternoon, President Cyril Ramaphosa has arrived in New York to attend his inaugural United Nations General Assembly session, scheduled to take place from the 25th to the 27th of September. The president, who took over the country's leadership earlier this year, will attend various activities. Well, as the world remembers Nelson Mandela's centenary, the United Nations will honor the global icon by unveiling a statue in his honor and holding a historic Nelson Mandela Peace Summit. The session will be a first for President Ramaphosa as our head of state. He will also use it as a golden opportunity to outline the country's domestic and foreign policy goals and priorities. Now, these include the country's land reform program aimed at fostering greater stability, inclusiveness and transformation within the South African economy. The president is also scheduled to meet with CEOs of major global companies as part of the drive now to attract foreign direct investment in order to ramp up the South African economy. This will form part of the build-up to South Africa's International Investment Conference. That's coming up on the 26th and 27th of October, with sharp focus on bringing investment of $100 billion into the South African economy over the next 5 years. President Ramaphosa is accompanied by several of his cabinet ministers. Well, this is the president's first visit to the United Nations as head of state and government. The SABC's correspondent, Sherwin Bryce Peace, was there when he touched down.
A very big week for the South African delegation because, of course, a precursor to that general debate on Tuesday will be the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit, the inaugural Nelson Mandela Peace Summit, and, of course, the unveiling of a statue, a bronze statue, which will be gifted by President Ramaphosa to the United Nations Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly. That will be happening first thing tomorrow morning. One of his first bilaterals today will be with the Executive Director of UN Women, South Africa's former Deputy President, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, but then he will before that, take some time to rest and recoup after that long South African Airways transcontinental flight here to New York. But certainly a very big week for South Africa. The president, of course, here for the first time in his capacity as head of state. And some of the big issues will be very much to explain what South Africa's foreign policy positions are to an international audience. Of course, a great deal of interest in what South Africa's positions are, given the fact that they will be entering the UN Security Council on the 1st of January next year. Of course, crucial elections in the DRC in December. That might be a very big focus for them as they start their term in January. And then, of course, the general debate. And on Tuesday, which begins on Tuesday, he will speak on Wednesday evening, but also engage with business leaders here. Of course, part of that big $100 billion investment drive that has become so crucial to South Africa's economic growth moving forward.
Now, you've touched on some of the issues that are very important for South Africa and Africa as a whole. But what is the significance of this heads of state meeting for the country, our country, and the continent?
Well, you know, the Mandela Peace Summit is, and you'll just excuse there's a bus pulling away from here, so you might have some difficulty hearing me. The significance of this here in particular will, of course, be that it's the new administration of Cyril Ramaphosa, the first, time that the chief diplomat, the international relations minister, Lindiwe Sisulu, is here. So they really want to put a different stamp on what can be expected by the South African government. But, of course, a big focus here is the ability of the president on the sidelines of the meetings at the General Assembly is to meet with business leaders. He will be engaged in a investment forum as part of the Bloomberg Global Forum, which will be happening at the Plaza Hotel. There will be a meeting specifically focused on investing in South Africa, some of the trade issues that might be of concern. So the economic element here cannot be discounted in addition to the geopolitical side. Of course, he will meet with the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the General Assembly, I understand there are a number of bilaterals confirmed, although I can confirm that the bilateral with President Donald Trump has not been confirmed. We understand that a meeting between the International Relations Minister and the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, will happen sometime this week. And of course, don't they have a great deal of a few things to discuss, given the tweets by President Trump, particularly on South Africa's land reform program, and really the pushback that we heard from President Ramaphosa and his International Relations Minister. So wouldn't we all like to be a fly on the room when she does meet with Mike Pompeo later this week? So there's a lot of different things going on here which we need to stay abreast of.
Definitely not a pushback, South Africa, on the discussion of land and compensation without redress. But any other activities that the President is expected to partake during the UN gathering, off the record, not official?
Of course, there are a number of high-level meetings that happen in addition and on the sidelines of the debate. There's a big meeting on peacekeeping. You will know that South Africa has a number of battalions that serve in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the MONUSCO mission there. There are a great deal of concern about the conduct of some of South Africa's troops, and we understand that the Defense Minister, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, will be engaging with the head of peacekeeping, Jean-Pierre Lacroix. And of course also a very big meeting that we want to focus on. And if I just look over my shoulder, I'm getting some indication that he might be arriving soon. One of the big meetings is also on tuberculosis. There's a high-level meeting that has been spearheaded by the South African delegation. They will adopt a resolution in terms of how the world is responding to tuberculosis. You know, the concern over the last decade has been countering the HIV/AIDS pandemic around the world. And lost in that conversation has been how to eradicate tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is the disease that kills the largest number of people globally, some 1.7 million people. And what Minister Aaron Motsoaledi has done, has negotiated, certainly led by Team South Africa here, has negotiated a document as the President comes up that will eradicate or have countries pledge to eradicate tuberculosis by 2030. Let's listen in now. The President of the Republic of South Africa pulling up here at his hotel in New York. He will be exiting that car shortly, and we are happy to bring you those images live. We'll try and greet him. We'll try and shout out, "Good morning, Mr. President. Welcome to New York." Let's see if we get a response. That's the protocol chief accompanying the President. Welcome to New York, Mr. President. Good to see you, sir. There he is, going into his hotel. He'll meet a number of ministers that are awaiting his arrival. Let me get back in shot here. There you see the official photographer also writing. So your timing was perfect coming here. The President is safely in his hotel. He's going to rest for the rest of the afternoon. And as I mentioned earlier, that first bilateral that he's going to have later will be with the Executive Director of UN Women, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. And as I was saying, the tuberculosis meeting, a very important one for South Africa. They have been spearheading these negotiations. There will be a resolution adopted on Wednesday. President will speak there, and literally countries will be committing or recommitting themselves to eradicating tuberculosis by the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals deadline of 2030. So as I said, it's about the economy, it's about geopolitics, it's about South Africa's foreign policy. And if I forgot to mention, on Monday, tomorrow, the President will also be engaged in a conversation at the Council on Foreign Relations. He will be in conversation with the former United States Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. Madeleine Albright, of course, the first lady to serve in that position ahead of Hillary Clinton in the administration of President Bill Clinton in the mid to late 90s. So a very interesting week, I imagine, in the days ahead.
Well, Sherman also spoke with South African Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi in New York this afternoon.
The focus, of this high-level meeting is so broad, and sometimes we forget that there's so many things that happen outside of the general debate. You are here particularly to lead South Africa's delegation in terms of the high-level meeting on tuberculosis. There's also a high-level meeting on non-communicable diseases. Tell us what the focus will be and why you have chosen to spearhead these two meetings.
Well, may I also add, I'm not only here to lead South Africans, but to participate as the global chairperson of the Stop TB Partnership. Yes, I'm presently the sitting chairperson of Stop TB Partnership. And remember, it is the Stop TB Partnership that requested this high-level meeting on TB. because we deal with TB issues around the globe, and TB is now #1 killer of all infectious diseases, and it was the only disease that was never given attention by a high-level meeting of heads of states. You are aware that HIV/AIDS has been here to United Nations, Ebola has been here to United Nations, non-communicable diseases have been here. This is going to be the third time. Antimicrobial resistance has been here in 2016. So it was during the debate on antimicrobial resistance where I was participating as the chairperson of Stop Partnership, and I asked a question: how do we defeat antimicrobial resistance when one third of it is because of drug-resistant TB? So if we don't tackle TB, we won't win the battle against antimicrobial resistance, which the world is, by the way, scared of. So the United Nations agreed. They scheduled a debate, a high-level meeting on TB, and here we are. So it's a dream come true for us in the Stop TB Partnership. So I'll be participating as both the Minister of Health in South Africa and as the Global Chairperson of Stop TB Partnership.
Thanks for the clarification, Minister. Of course, you look at the numbers, right? About 1.7 million people globally die from TB every year. And if you look at the map of its prevalence, it's Africa, it's Southeast Asia, you know, it's not so much prevalent in North America, Australia region. So this is very much a developing country concern.
Well, look, TB is a socio-economic disease of the poor, but I must state now it's a world concern. That's why it's coming to United Nations. You are right, Shebin, it was ignored because it was regarded as a disease of the developing world. I must tell you, now most countries, even Europe, are starting to realize that TB is a problem. I mean, it's killing 1.5 million people per annum. And without really comparing diseases, you are aware what happened during the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. Some 4 years ago, the whole world was moving in a whirlwind. At the end of it, 11,000 people had died globally because of Ebola, but 1.5 million of TB. But that did not even make any blip on the radar screen. The world just ignored it, but it's continuing to kill and kill and kill. As I'm speaking now, 10 million people globally have got TB, and only 6 million are on treatment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Minister, but also there hasn't been the level of investment in pharmaceuticals, in research, in terms of the drugs required to combat this. I mean, where are we on that score, and what sort of money are we going to need to move this process forward? Yes,
indeed, you are right. It's one of the things we are going to discuss with the heads of state. For 50 years, we've been using the same treatment for TB. There was no investment on research and development for new drugs. It's only recently that new drugs are coming to the pipeline, like pitaquilline, delanamide, but they are coming after 50 years. So you are right, and unless new drugs come into the pipeline, won't defeat this pandemic. It is scary, but it doesn't scare anybody, because TB has been with us for 200 years, because it's not a drama queen, TB. It kills very silently without anybody watching, but when you check the numbers, they are scary. Now the other diseases are dramatic in the way they enter the world, and everybody knows about them, but the number of people who end up dying are not as many as what TB is doing. I mean, I'm repeating again and again and again. It is #1 killer of all infectious diseases globally. Number 2, it contributes 1/3 to antimicrobial resistance. That means 1/3 of all the diseases that are refusing to be treated with known treatment is because of TB. So there's no way the world can ignore it, and it's going to affect economies in a way unimaginable.
The South African mission here has been spearheading negotiations around this resolution that will be adopted this week. What is this?
The declaration.
Oh, it's a declaration. What does this declaration set out, Minister?
Well, the declaration is very simple. It's based on what you call 5 asks. In November last year, in preparation for this high-level meeting, the World Health Organization, the Stop TB Partnership, which I'm chairing, the Russian Federation, had a joint meeting in Moscow to prepare for this. That meeting was opened officially by the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, yes. The Deputy Secretary General of United Nations, Ms. Amina Mohammed, was there. the Director General of the World Organization, the Executive Director of UNAIDS. They were all there, and we discussed 5 asks. These are the 5 main things we're going to ask heads of states to consider as our leaders, because we said this matter has gone beyond the Ministers of Health. Now, one of the asks, of course, is the new drug pipeline and research and development. So one of the most contentious issues was that there were countries in the developed world, the US unfortunately amongst one of them, and especially the US, who were worried about the wording in the declaration about TRIPS flexibilities, the trade-related international property rights in terms of research and development, the pipeline of new medicines, because they thought it will sort of dampen research and innovation.
Is this a matter of generics being used and that kind of thing?
Yes, it's about generics, but a pipeline on new drugs, and it's more or less mostly about intellectual property. Of course. That if we use, obviously, the US is a main contributor to the whole world about R&D, research and development. That's not something that is up for debate. We know it. Most of the research and development in pharmaceutical companies come from the US because it's the biggest economy on earth. So the argument is that if we include TRIPS flexibilities, that means trade-related intellectual property rights in the TB declaration, then people who innovate new drugs will lose out. But you are aware that this issue has been debated by the World Trade Organization, WTO, by the World Intellectual Property Rights, WIPO, by the World Health Organization, WHO, about the balance. Because while research and development is important, how do you research and develop new drugs which the world can't use because they are beyond the reach of the most of the world? So you need a balance. That, yes, research and development, but what about human interest?
So does the declaration achieve that balance?
Well, Japan came in to try and strike the proper wording and mediate, and I think that mediation works, and we're happy about it.
Minister, let's just shift focus for a minute. Our sympathies to you and your colleagues. Of course, the passing of your comrade and cabinet colleague, Edna Molewa, the Environment Minister. She was a regular feature in New York, whether you're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, whether you're talking about her spearheading South Africa's negotiation prowess in terms of climate change. Share a few thoughts with us. How are you feeling? How's everyone doing? Very sad news indeed.
Oh, it was devastating, Sherwin. It was devastating. You are right. She was a leader in that field of climate change, environmental safety for all the citizens. She was right there in the forefront and very dedicated. We were devastated, absolutely. The past 2 weeks have not been very easy for us. She came back from Fokak.
China, right?
Yes, in China, where she came back very sick. And we were very hopeful, especially us in the health sector who were interacting with her every day. I personally was visiting her in hospital every day. She sits next to me in cabinet and in many other forums because her surnames are, Molewa and Molewa next to each other. Yes, so I was very close to her. We're following each other's progress, and by the middle of this week, we were very hopeful because she could speak to us now, but all of a sudden things change. It's just still so unbelievable. You'll hope it's something that is temporary, that is going to pass, but unfortunately, the reality is that it's not going to.
Minister, we had the privilege of interacting with Minister Molewa many times when she came here. In fact, one of her stops was the SABC whenever she came. And one thing that struck me about her, similar to what strikes me about you, is the granular detail of her understanding of the issues. Whether you're talking about the international treaties, whether you're talking about domestic policy, she really knew the legislation, and that was the foundation on which she built her record. I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, I do agree, because as I'm saying, I know her. I was not aware that you are also classifying me in that category, but I know, yes.
It's a compliment, Minister.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you very much. It's not usual that you get a compliment from the media, especially when you work for the Department of Health. But thank you for that. Yes, you are aware, you are right. She does have those granular details, especially about environmental matters, climate issues. She was busy fighting, this rhino poaching. And she was winning, as we saw the figures of rhino poaching coming down. It was because of the granular details she knows about the work she does.
Okay, Minister, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. I know you've just got off a long flight. You can get some rest. You have a busy week ahead. Thank you, sir.
I forget a busy day already, not a week. We're starting today to get very busy. But thank you very much.
Well, earlier, Peter Ndoro spoke to analyst Professor Nomboniso Gasa about Cyril Ramaphosa's inaugural visit to New York.
Cyril Ramaphosa appears at the United Nations General Assembly for the first time. Do you think South Africa will be seen differently because it's him, or what are your thoughts? Very quickly, 10 seconds each. Start with you, Prof.
Well, he's definitely not going to miss meetings. That's one thing. So, and he's going to arrive on time. So that's very important because how people receive you is also about how you present yourself. So I think that's very important. And I think that he might be received differently, much more positively and taken seriously, of course, depending on the content that he brings.
Right.
But I'm quite comfortable just with the fact that he is going to show up and is going to show up on time.
10 seconds.
Yeah, I think that there's a very different feel and a very different reputation preceding the president now. I think that there is a lot of negative attributes previously, but we're going to have to wait and see.
SABC Foreign Desk will bring you comprehensive coverage of UNGA 73. SABC News, impartial and independent.